Today's episode is with Dave Segel. He is the founder of Mako Trading. He's also an adventurer, a philanthropist, and also a movie producer. But most importantly, he is an incredible entrepreneur. And if you have an interest in entrepreneurialism, then I highly, highly recommend that you listen to this whole thing. Enjoy. Dave, hi, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, Johnny. How are you?
Good, I'm really well. Thank you so much for joining me today and joining everybody who's going to be listening and watching.
What a treat. Thank you for inviting.
Pleasure. So, for anybody who doesn't know who you and where are you from?
Yeah, my name's David. I'm a derivatives trader in London, I guess, as a profession. I live in the U.S. in various places, out in the country in Wyoming now, but spent a lot of time in London, love London, done a lot of trading business out of here over the last 30, 35 years. And, so that's why we're here.
Great. Is trading something that you were always attracted to?
Yeah, I started trading when I left university, and I was fascinated by it. I discovered trading accidentally, walked onto one of those big open outcry floors, and it was jaw-dropping. Thousands of people dressed in funny colored jackets, screaming and yelling and buying and selling and waving tickets, and I just got sucked right into it. I knew I had to do it.
Was it quite exhilarating?
It was, still is. It's very different now, but it was exhilarating, sort of like athletic, mental athletic, or even physical, to stand in a pit and trade and buy and sell things. And sort of scratch that itch of competition when I was, a new professional. And that changed, that grew into sort of a more disciplined and more organized business, which is now the business of Mako. Sure, it was definitely exhilarating.
So you started working for someone?
I was never good. Honestly, I was always a terrible employee. I had one job once in the space and proceeded to get fired for being egotistical. And I've never had a job since. That was 30-some years ago. So I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always done it my way, which is, I'm not proud of that, but that's just been the reality. And then I found other people who I can work with who are like-minded and good at what they do, and built collectives, I would call them. And those have become businesses, and that business is now expressed as Mako, the global derivatives trading company.
What do you think drove you to get fired, set up by yourselves? Not drove you to get fired, obviously.
I have this drive to want to achieve, to be judged based on my contribution. I like the risk factor of, live or die by what you do. I love the risk associated with derivatives trading, options trading, because it's a high risk game. Had plenty of opportunities to terminally damage our business in the past, which gets everyone's adrenaline going. But there's great rewards, and there's a very immediate effect when you're a trader, because your performance is often measured by a P&L number, which is often real time. So you have this direct feedback loop for your performance in trading, which is why a lot of our trading team really enjoys it.
How do you think the profession has evolved then, since being on the floor, being scrappy, wearing the coloured jackets?
It's changed a lot. I'm surprised that we've been able to adapt with it in some ways. In some ways, we've chosen to lead the change rather than chase the change. I think that's been an important part of Mako's history. There have been 4 or 5 junctures over the 30-some years that I've done this when we and our competitors and our peers were at a crossroads and had to choose to either milk out the old model for as long as they could and then stop, or be willing to reinvent themselves. And the few times that we've always chosen the reinvention, but we've chosen it with the lens that we want to be part of defining what the future is going to look like, rather than just chasing it and adapting it to survive.
It's a risk in that.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk in that, but we're already in the risk business.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And one of the characteristics I think that makes entrepreneurs successful is this requirement to take risk. And another thing that makes entrepreneurs successful, on top of the requirement to take risk, is that the ones that are successful also got some luck in the middle. Because 10 people could have taken those same risks and 8 of them might have gotten knocked out, and they are no longer entrepreneurs in that successful realm. So for sure, in my journey, there's been several points of good fortune, good luck. Sometimes you make your own luck through perseverance and through creativity and through hard work.
So it makes me think about resilience. How do you maintain that resilience as a leader? And when I think about leadership, I think about, from my point of view as an employer, I think it's my responsibility to. I think people lend me their careers, right? And I think that comes with a great responsibility from my point of view to them. But because of that point of view, I think it encumbers them with a big responsibility. And then we're all in service to each other, almost. And from my point of view, I hope that creates sort of a resiliency framework, right? So we can get through our hard times, which we do, and we have, and we hopefully will again. Whilst reinventing yourself, how has your leadership experience changed as a leader?
Well, sounds like 2 different interesting topics there. One is this resiliency concept, and the other is sort of the leadership approach that we've chosen to take. The resiliency one, I think, is really interesting because it comes, those junctures in which the business has been at risk or relationships have been at risk have proven over time to be the opportunities to build trust as a team, to surprise ourselves with corporate resiliency, to get through things that did not look like there was any path through. And those build strength in these relationships. I work with colleagues here that I've worked with for over 30 years. And we've been through a lot of those situations. And there are a lot of colleagues that I worked with in that period with whom I didn't get through those. And we're not on that path together. But that resiliency comes through this repeated experience of facing hard things, trusting each other, finding compromise, leaning on each other. And it really is kind of remarkable how resilient businesses can be. The things they get through that look like they should have been catastrophic. And then the strength that comes as you mature, because you learn from those things.
How important, therefore, are relationships within your business?
Well, my business is to some degree my life journey. These friendships that I have here are familial. We've been doing this so much for so long, which is a real treat, right? I don't really have to distinguish between work and friendship and extended family. So I expect that it's a lifelong journey. And I just feel fortunate to have those relationships. And
we've done some work with an NGO out in just outside Chicago called World Maker International, and it's headed up by a woman called Dr. Molly Martin. She's an amazing woman, and she headed up before Worldmaker. She headed up the National Resilience Institute in the States, and she talks about resilience being the ability to thrive through adversity. And I wonder, because of your attitudes and your experience with these people that you worked with through 30 years, having to reinvent yourself, when I say yourself, I mean Mako, and evolve your own sort of entrepreneurial journey. I wonder if those relationships and that ability to be transparent and honest has given you the fortitude to get through those crunchy junctures, or reinvent yourself imaginatively.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of it's a creative process. This whole figuring out what you want your business to become is a creative exercise. You have to think outside the box. You have to think about being something that you are not yet, and maybe that you've never seen, maybe that doesn't exist yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always amazed that people don't view business as a creative exercise. Sometimes I do hear that. I hear, oh, it's mechanical. Oh, and I guess it could be, but it's probably not going to be very successful if you're not.
I think there's some people who need that mechanics, but I don't think an entrepreneur maybe ever thinks too I can only speak from personal experience. I don't think too mechanically. I spend my life quite often 12 months in the future wondering about a problem where we haven't even created the foundation yet to solve the problem. Do you find it easy to stay in that horizon sort of scanning space?
Well, I fancy myself as an artist. I'm not a successful or even a competent artist, but I fancy myself as being a painter and a sculptor and a writer and all these things. In reality, my creative expression and my energy creatively has gone to business. And that's entirely worked and satisfied that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, as I no longer work full-time in business, I'm finding that now I get to go and pursue other creative things.
Mm-hmm.
But they're really scratching that same itch. They're just a requirement of thinking outside the box and building things.
So what are you working on at the moment then? What itch are you scratching at the moment?
Actually, I've been doing a lot of writing. I love writing.
Yeah. Like a novel, creative writing?
Watch this space and we'll see what comes out.
Great. I'll buy the first book. Great. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, cool. And I know that you've been heavily involved in philanthropy. How important is that to you?
Well, that's another journey of change, trying to figure out where it all goes back to man's search for meaning. Why do we do this? Particularly when you work in derivatives trading or in the trading industry or in the finance industry. A lot of times, you're torn between, am I just doing this out of greed to make money? Or am I doing this for some higher purpose? And I spent a long time asking myself those questions. What's the purpose of this? And I have deduced that creativity is an important and valid part of that. That helping the team and the staff that we have, partners that I have, the employees that we have, build careers that are filled with a rich journey. Some of them have done extremely well financially at a young age. Helping them navigate this journey of responsibility is important to me and is satisfying to me. But this whole search for meaning is really valid and really important. And it was my very first bonus check that I got when I was a trader in the late 80s. For a reason that I still don't understand, I went and I gave it all away to this sort of random charity that I had just met. And there was a joy in that. It was sort of the beginning of a journey that I went on, which was understanding the value of giving back, understanding the responsibility of doing that effectively, seeing the consequences of doing it ineffectively. cyclically, creating dependency cyclically. We've done a lot of work in mostly East Africa, but across the continent of Africa. And there was certainly a period when we were doing a lot of first responder and giving and just pure philanthropic giving and finding very little result out of it. Very little, build a bricks and mortar structure and finding out that there was no resource to support it and there was no community buy-in, and it just ends up rusting, being another disused building that somebody from the West came and thought was a good idea.
Yeah.
So we've been refining that model and changing that model over that 25, 30-year journey, and looking to create sustainability and looking to create dignity through those investments and looking to treat them as investments, which are not necessarily showing us a P&L return, but are showing a return, whether they're helping the community or building sustainability or helping health or other requirements.
I think that, for me, sounds like the most important reason for philanthropy, right? To elevate, to inspire, and to give access to betterment. If you're just building something somewhere and there's no buy-in, then who are you doing it for? You're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for the people.
Yeah. Well, I thought we were doing it for other people back then, and to some degree, I'm sure we were. But it's a learning process.
Yeah, for sure.
You go, you try something, you learn something, you grow a bit, because actually it turns out that they probably helped me more than I helped them.
Yeah.
Then you change and you modify and you do it again a different way, and that's all part of this. It's yet another creative process, I guess.
Yeah.
But what's been really fun is watching as the culture of Mako has developed over the last season, maybe the last generation. This community has just embraced a spirit of generosity. It's become part of who we are at Mako. And I had nothing to do with that. I don't even get involved with that. But the community has really adopted ways to be serving the local community, responding to situations that we find out about that are either in the news or relevant to somebody in the team, and then to using our entrepreneurial spirit to help teach other people to be entrepreneurs, whether it's in East Africa or it's in East London.
Why do you think that has happened?
Why have we adopted that spirit of generosity?
Yes.
Well, I think it's naturally inside us. Right? Maybe as a business, the leadership I encouraged some of that activity a long time ago, but it just felt natural to everybody. Other people have picked it up and adopted it, and it's really become part of the DNA of who Mako is.
Because we work in financial services a lot. We don't see that everywhere. So I think it's quite unique, and not entirely unique.
Yeah.
But I think that's something to be really excited by and very proud of. So good job.
And one thing that's actually, I think, helped us in that process is we're in a unique position as a business in that we don't really have any customers or clients or requirements to sell anything to anybody, because we service an anonymous market, right? Who doesn't know who we are. We provide liquidity in that market. We need to offer a service to get paid. That's sort of one of our base philosophies. But it's pretty anonymous. And my point out of that is that we don't have anything to prove to anybody. We don't need a big sort of ESG message in our marketing campaign to convince anybody to buy our retail product. So our motives are inherently simpler, maybe more pure, maybe just figuring out ways to give back because we've been given a lot of opportunity.
Do you think that improves performance on a day-to-day?
I think it improves satisfaction. I don't know that it improves motivation for performance. And I think that the team of people that we gather around us are highly motivated and are pretty adamant about seeking optimal performance. And that's great. I love that, but I don't know that generosity piece is the driver there.
Maybe not drive it. I just wondered if it was something which unites people, right, to work together and to collaborate and to support, because there is something outside just simply doing their jobs, which connects them.
I think one of the biggest benefits of it, and this is only because I've learned this in my own personal life, is that anything that gets me out of me is a good thing. Anything that gets me out of my head is a good thing. So being able to think of ways to be of service, whether it's through philanthropic work or through your job as a boss and having somebody who's reporting to you and helping them with their career, or through just the person you run into on the street, every opportunity that you can take to do something for somebody else, in my case, seems to bring me away from too much thinking and towards a place of more happiness, more simplicity, more joy, I guess. So, in that sense, yeah, I think it is. It creates a better balance for people. You come to work and all you do is focus on you, and it gets a little myopic and a little bit dull and a little bit insane. So thinking about somebody else every once in a while is probably a good idea.
Absolutely. I think if you do the first part, you probably burn brightly for a little bit, and then your flame goes out, I should imagine. I wonder if that's why there's a lot of burnout generally. You know,
Can we talk about burnout? Actually, burnout
I'd love to.
Really interesting expression. When I started as a trader in the 80s and 90s, there was a whole ethos around burnout, almost like there was an appeal to it. You know, it was known at that time that guys would go to Wall Street, they would, work 23 hours a day, they would, snort cocaine and run around and drink and play and swear and yell and chase money, and 5 or 10 years later they'd have a heart attack at 32 and they'd die. And there were some I know the true stories around that. I think people have learned a better work-life balance, but these days, and we certainly encourage people to spend a lot of time making sure they're managing here at Mako their work-life balance and their mental. There's no focus on that 30 years ago, in my experience. But burnout was a real thing, and the reason it was so impactful, I think, now looking at the chemistry of it, is that trading has always been a adrenaline junkie business. All of that, a lot of the guys, we do cortisol tests on a lot of our traders. And a lot of myself included, some of the data says that, we really destroyed a lot of our adrenaline response system through the excitement of, living in a fight or flight state for 8 or 10 hours a day for years at end. And that's going to cause some, health issues and some burnout issues. And so now it's really important that by understanding that we don't put ourselves through that. The flip side of that is this notion of can't do it anymore, or retirement. And I am not a fan of retirement. For me, I will do what I do until I physically can't do that anymore, and then hopefully I'll be able to do some other things. But there's not an end goal that I'm going to do this and make a bunch of money and then pause, because the satisfaction is in the doing, it's in the creating, it's in the relationships, and it's in the sense of reward when we achieve things.
As a leader, do you try and facilitate a space where people can lean into their own curiosity?
The drive that you talk about that comes from inside. For me, it was really specific when I was little, when I was sort of 12, 13, 14 years old. I had this obsession with this notion of two things. One, of self-sustaining institutions, or let's call it the result of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you could build or make that would then stand on its own, right? So that's creating something. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, even when I was little, I used to think about it in terms of businesses, or philanthropic effort can be the same thing. How do we invest our time and our work into building something that's legacy, that's going to be able to stand on its own when we're not influencing it? And I've always been obsessed with that. So that's actually been a big driver for me in a lot of the things that we've done, which certainly includes the work at Mako, and certainly includes a lot of the philanthropic focus, which is now on building things that can keep going when we're not influencing them for the benefit of other people. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the team, I've always been a fan of giving people a lot of rope. And I've seen people I've worked with hang themselves with it. But that's the way I would want to be treated. I love to encourage people to make mistakes. I love to learn from the things that didn't go right. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the building that relationship of trust. I try to help that team that I'm responsible for not make mistakes that are going to be terminal to the activity or really, really negatively consequential. I try to intervene if that's going to be the case. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, my job is go help people, go learn, seek advice, gain from the experience I've had and all the mistakes that I've made. And that's just a model that I've always enjoyed.
It feels like now that you see yourself a bit like a mentor as opposed to anything else, like your responsibilities through this conversation I'm gleaning is really quite holistic as to what you offer now. Would you agree?
Well, I've worked on Mako in various forms for over 30 years, but I've probably started and been involved with at least 30, maybe 40 different entrepreneurial ventures in my career. Mm-hmm. And of those, I would say only 10 of them at the most even survived the first couple of years of attempting to be an entrepreneurial startup. Mm-hmm. That's the nature of this. Now, through that experience, I've gained a lot of wisdom about what not to do. And I really enjoy anytime I meet a young man or woman who has a vision and has a good idea and has an enthusiasm to make it into a self-sustaining creative organization. I just feel it's a privilege to be able to help shortcut them from having to make all the mistakes that I made and come alongside and encourage them and maybe coach them through that if that's what they want. Hold them accountable, because a lot of times entrepreneurs do not manage well in the area of accountability. Mm-hmm. Very common challenge. Mm-hmm. Help them see basic lessons like cash is king, that's what's going to kill you, or style drift is bad, let's focus on what your mission is, or learn to say no. Mm-hmm. All these things or HR and finance and tax and regulatory are all really important things that you're not thinking about because you're thinking about this big creative vision of what you want to deliver to the world that it's never seen. Mm-hmm. And I love that. You can tell. I just love that. Yeah. So I do I do have right now 5 or 6 entrepreneurs that I mentor with, that I work with on a weekly, more often frequent basis. Mm-hmm. And it's just a rich journey.
I think, whilst you're talking, my heart is like pounding because I find it so exciting. And I think to myself, I always have this dream, like, yes, the company that, from today, I want to build it and I want it to provide for the people who are working within it. And obviously I want it to provide for my family. And I've written in my book, because we just rebranded, a letter to my children and to myself that I want them to look in this book when I'm dead and gone and be like, oh, that's what he said to himself when he started this. Mm. But like once I've done this, then we're just on to the next step, right? Whatever that is. But my dream has always been really to kind of do exactly what you've just said, to help inspire people to achieve the things that they want to achieve. And I've always wanted to have like this really precious network of really incredible people that I can see someone who has a great idea and who's struggling. I can be like, hey, come and meet this person, or come and meet that person.
Well, I think you're already doing that. You're in the middle of doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of doing that. There's not a do it and be done with it in that
No.
sense, right? So I think that spirit of giving away relationships is a real gift, and a lot. I've done a lot of work in Hollywood and filmmaking and in entertainment, and, the whole talent space. And I would characterize that industry as not being particularly good at holding relationships lightly and being willing to give them away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of needing to control relationships in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And it drives me a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But the flip side of that is to be able to connect this person with that person and then get out of the way and let them figure it out it's generosity in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely encourage more of that.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely connect to what you're saying about the theatre, TV and film industry. I auditioned a lot for jobs in Hollywood, never got any, but certainly I worked a lot in the theatre, and I can echo exactly those sentiments that you share. And actually, I think to myself, well, what is really wonderful? What is really wonderful about that profession at its heart? You take away the often quite toxic relationships which can occur, or closed-minded, the door is closed. When you get that opportunity to be in front of people, a bit like sailing and flying that we were saying earlier, the drug isn't the applause. The drug is the communion. And that's what we fight for every day, I think. And certainly as an entrepreneur, as an actor, that's what we fight for. And as an entrepreneur, I think that's the drug that I chase all the time. How can I create environments where there is a communion between me, my clients, people who work with us, because that's for me where the magic happens.
Can you tell me about your leadership style? I've seen so many leadership models in my day, and I've seen sort of very authoritarian, very dictatorial leadership styles. I've seen very collaborative styles, very much servant model styles. I try to encourage people to lead in a style that makes the most sense for their personality. What's your leadership style?
I have an obsession with helping people break out of pigeonholes. It drives me crazy. Because you're from here, you can't do that. Because you look like this, you can't do that, etc. Because your brain works in this way, you're therefore limited or not valued. Which means that as a leader, maybe sometimes this is to my detriment, always looking to find a way to help you break out of that pigeonhole, or the things which people have said to you in your upbringing. So I do see it as an act of service. I do see it as an act of almost coaching at times. I do see it as a responsibility to, at times, block off danger, and at times exposing danger. Not danger, but like learn some gritty lessons. I don't know if that's a succinct answer, but I think that's how I look at it, because I'm very, very focused on vision and purpose and what makes me tick. And being a dictator does not make me tick.
Well, we've had a recent leadership discussion here at Mako around pausing and making sure that our assumptions about what is good for whoever on the team we're thinking about helping aligns with their actual interests, capabilities, or assumptions. It's really easy for me to fall into a trap of thinking that because something is motivating to me, it's going to be motivating for you, right? Or because I would solve that problem this way, you'll solve that problem the same way. And it's really hard to learn the lesson. I'm just learning now, and I've been working at this stuff for almost 35 years, 40 years, whatever. It's really important to let people to listen and to understand what is, for as an example, compensation. We have a compensation model that we use here that we think is highly motivating. So we apply it to everybody. And then we're surprised when we find out that actually people think different things are motivating than what we think are motivating, whether it's soft benefits or a bonus structure or a recognition for something or the freedom to behave a certain way or to whatever it is. So we really need to get out of our own heads as leaders and listen and try to really address where that audience is coming from. And that's just in the compensation. It applies even more directly to problem solving because a lot of the team out here has much better solutions to a lot of the puzzles we face than I would ever come up with. So I really need to step back and trust that they're going to individually and as a collective solve puzzles in a way that is much better than I would ever figure out.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, I think, an act of service in itself, and also leaving your ego at the door because I have this title, because I'm from here, I know best, I think is generally an unhelpful attitude and indicative of quite a dominant hierarchy. Some of the personal mentors that I have, one of them particularly is from a military point of view. He comes from the military. He always talks about a good leader should be actively trying to make themselves redundant. And if you're answering or fixing everything, well, you're too deep into the business. And what are you actually teaching the people who your succession planning goes out the window? What are you teaching the people who work for you? How you're not inspiring them? And he gives many examples, and one specific, and I'm not going to share it in detail because I can never do it justice, where he was in the middle of an operation and there was a problem, and the youngest and newest person in the company fixed the problem. Out of 750 people, from colonels to privates, someone who'd been a soldier for 6 months, was the only person who could fix it. And I think I find that an inspiring point of view.
Yeah, that servant leadership model of how we do this, it's hard to apply it in the military context because it's a very hierarchical context in some ways, but it's extremely effective in military operations when a leader can be there, can understand all the aspects because they've done the work, can step in, can support and lift up his or her team, squadron, platoon. And that happens to be the model that I'm most used to and feels most natural to me to try to be of service to the team. And service can mean accountability, and service can mean difficult things. That's certainly a model that I appreciate, and I think is pretty characteristic of the way Mako does.
Certainly, as I've witnessed.
Business.
Yeah,
but I'm also wary of trying to make everybody do things the way I do them. So I really encourage all of our leadership teams to find leadership relationships and approaches that match their skill set.
Yeah. As to quote my dad, he would always say there's no such thing as an absolute, and there's no right way necessarily. And it's interesting on the coaching, we've done loads of coaching, and I say some things to one client and it sort of blows their mind and my ego gets all like punched up. Jesus, I'm amazing. Then I say it to another client and they think I'm talking complete bananas, right? They totally dismiss it. So that, any type of leadership, any type of communication is always about the other person and what we're trying to achieve together. And I think that sort of equation creates a likely ability or a likely environment for high performance.
I do like, it's not a comprehensive analogy, but I do like the little word picture about leadership that says if you want to know if you're an effective leader, look over your shoulder and see if anyone's following you.
Yeah.
There are pieces of that really do work. I've seen very strong and very dominant leaders who maybe do have people following them, but it's because they're connected by a chain or a cable or they're being dragged along.
But then look at that person, chain cable. Yeah, exactly. The emotional baggage which comes with it. Is it healthy? Is it inspirational? Is that person being lifted up? Is it long term?
And if you go back and apply the original model, which is how do we build self-sustaining individuals, leadership is the same thing. How do we help people become successful professionals who are finding all these right balances and being creative and delivering solutions without our input? Same thing you were saying.
Yeah.
How do we work ourselves out of a job? Great.
Yeah. Dave, I've really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Pleasure.
If you believe what we believe, please help us grow this podcast by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Thanks.